Alright, welcome back to another state of the game for my dream game called Terry. I made a ton of changes since the last update in February, including new AI, item drops, and combat improvements. There's also a brand new building and farming system and other graphical changes, and I have a very big announcement at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. But before that, let's rewind all the way back to 2019. Even if you are a veteran subscriber, you're not going to know this, but I posted this high quality screenshot to my 10 followers on Twitter at the time, announcing that I had started to work on a brand new 3D survival RPG game using this badly modeled yet familiar block character. A few months later, I shared another update and it looked like this. I actually don't know what I was trying to show in this screenshot. It's terrible, but I was 16 years old, give me a break. And then that was it. There was no other screenshots, there was no updates, no posts. The project had failed and my Twitter account became an X account. By 2021, I had finished high school, started university, and it was peak COVID, so I had plenty of free time, and that's when I dropped the first devlog video that some of you will remember.
Welcome guys to this new devlog style series.
And surprisingly, it got a lot of views, which was a big motivator for me to keep working on the game. A few devlogs later though, it stopped again. It turns out you need money to live and games don't pay the bills. So that's when I shifted from game dev to app dev. I started building apps and software, I worked with investors, I did an internship, landed a full-time role as a software engineer, and finished uni, which brings us to today. Since the last devlog, I've added farming, building, crafting, and cooking, but a ton of other work has also happened behind the scenes. A lot of the project was refactored with everything I've learned while I was away from game dev. I added pipelines to automatically deploy builds to Steam and automatically run unit tests because I'm an engineer, that's what we do. I also added a data saving system so you can have multiple save profiles and actually make progress in the game, and I integrated the game with Steam's stats and achievement systems, but also Steam's cloud save system. These things aren't as exciting as new gameplay features, but with these completed, it means a lot of the more difficult parts of making the game are now finished and I can focus more on the content. For example, the save system had a lot of technical questions that needed to be fixed to make it more robust, like what happens if the player closes the game during the save while it's writing to the file. For this, my solution was to write everything to a temporary file and then move the temporary file to replace the real save file. That way, if the game crashes or exits during a save, it just means the changes are lost, which is better than corrupting and making the entire save unplayable. I also added a save hashing system, so it compares the hash in the metadata of the save to the actual saved data in case the player modifies the save outside of the game. This is less about avoiding cheaters and more about in case they modify the data that makes it unreadable. But then what if they did modify the code not knowing that it gets hashed? It needs a backup to read from, so I had to add a whole duplicate of the save writing code so that it writes a backup and it reads from the backup in case the original is corrupted or missing or whatever. And with that said, let's talk about the new farming system. You can now plant seeds and forget they exist just like in real life, or build a well and water them and be a farmer. You can also cook 5-star restaurant quality food just to feed it to your dog. Cooking things takes about 10 seconds before the item just pops out, and it works via the menus just like the rest of the crafting system. And I've added back the combat locking I had in my earlier devlogs after a big overhaul of the character controller, and this time it comes with a combat role. But that's not all. The new building system means you can place down a construction site and build things like crafting benches, furnaces, and in the future a lot more. Building things feels like work since you actually have to carry things one by one, which to me makes it more fun since resource management and where you build your base makes a much bigger difference. And it also opens up room in the future to add abilities or items to make building easier, like carrying more than one item or an item transport system. It just makes sense, like try fitting a whole forest into your back pocket. This game is about realism. You want to craft an anvil? Get some iron, smelt the iron into a block of iron, and then carry it to your anvil construction. Boom! Anvil. Since there's farming, there's also a time system and day-night cycle. Crops take a different amount of days to grow, and you need to water them every day, but you can also just watch the sunset with your dog if you like. It's taking quite a lot of time to get the graphics looking the way they have for the day-night cycle, but I'm still not super happy with it. I think they'll do it for now, and honestly they'll probably get released as they are, but maybe I'll update them in the future. Remember, this was all developed in Unity Universal Render Pipeline, so there is no HDRP features. The volumetric lighting that you're seeing is actually done by a package that I just found on GitHub that someone had made for URP in Unity. Surprisingly, worked for Unity 6. Big thank you to them. I will link their repo in the description if you're interested. Definitely check it out if you use Unity URP. It's really good. Speaking of graphics changes, there's been improvements to the player character animations and more importantly movement. Gliding is also back, but no, the dog cannot fly yet. I think the character just feels a lot more responsive and easy to control now. Honestly, looking at where the game was in February versus now and how it looked and felt and played back then versus now, I'm so happy with how it's turned out. Obviously, there's a lot more that needs to be done, but I think looking at the two versions side by side, it's almost unrecognizable. It really feels like the game's actually starting to come together finally. And for the developers out there thinking, how do you make something like this? The project has like 500 code files. It's pretty big. But with how I've designed it to be expandable and easy to work in, it actually makes iteration and debugging really easy, and also makes adding new features really easy. I've split everything into their own assemblies and managed dependencies as best as I can across them. I've used interfaces so things don't depend on concrete logic, which lets me modify implementation without breaking everything else in the game. In other words, there's just no spaghetti code, and it is the most satisfying repository to work in. And believe me, I've seen some horrendous repositories. I'm still working on adding exploration, quests, dungeon crawling, puzzles and boss fights, and interior decoration and home improvement. And well, the game needs multiplayer too. But I'm the sole developer of this game, and I'm making this game while working full-time as a software engineer in big tech. And that brings me to my big announcement. Terry is officially on Steam. You can wishlist it right now. This is the first time I'm releasing a game on Steam, and your support really goes a long way. Wishlisting it is free, and it just means you'll be notified when the game is fully released. Currently, the game is in a closed playtest with a few members of my Discord server. If you want to join the Discord, the link to that is in the description below. I want to make the game openly available soon, even if it's not completely finished. That way I can add your suggestions and feedback much faster, helping me make Terry the best game it can be. But that's about it for this devlog. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care and peace.